Okay, सही है. Hello people, welcome to ForumIAS. Today we are going to have discussion on test paper of mains which you have given a week ago, right? See, when we observe the question paper, okay, of public administration this year, see there is one tendency of UPSC, that is repeating, okay, repeating questions in mains every year, right? Continuously we are seeing this. By the way, this is true not for, public administration alone cannot claim this thing. Actually, this you will find in every social science, because social science as a subject, the nature of study which it does, right, the study obviously is behavioral. Then you don't have much scope when it comes to behavioral, rather than repeating the topics, right? Number two, we see one thing this year, that in paper topics are repeated, topics are repeated. When we do this in test series, many times, you may have doubt why same topic is coming again and again, but it is actually UPSC which is following this trend. Take the case of questions which are related to audit. Continuously you will see 2-3 questions this year. Then take the questions which are related to union state relations. Continuously you saw 2 to 3 questions this year in same paper, right? Now people are very curious to know the level of question paper this year which UPSC has asked. So when it comes to paper 1, right, paper 1, I will say, as always, it is abstract in nature but easy to solve, subject to, right, subject to only one thing, that if you have conceptual clarity, because paper 1 of any social science discipline demands the conceptual clarity, right? Directly or indirectly, this is also what is needed in paper 2, right? That is the real difference between general studies and public administration. Or let me be very specific, that is the real difference between polity governance versus public administration. Okay, polity governance and public administration, right? So this is what is required from students, right? Now when we see the previous year question paper, there are some trends. I am sure since you people have written mains, you may be knowing properly, right? For example, come to paper 1, right? The most asked topic since 20 years, this year is, by the way, exception for that, is comparative public administration. It has been seen that around 15 to 20% questions every year usually comes from this topic, right? So it is number 1. Okay, it is number 1. Then in paper 1, the weightage of administrative theory is obviously not less 15 to 22. Even sometimes we have seen even 30% questions are coming from administrative theory, right? This is actually directly we are calculating. If we start calculating indirectly, it may go around 50 to 60%, right? Then we see questions from public policy around 10%. Then we see questions from development administration around 10%. Right after that, personal administration. Okay, after that we see questions, specifically questions related to training, right? Then we see financial administration. Okay, and after this topic, for example, there is topic called administrative law. Then there is topic called techniques of administrative improvement. Then there is topic called administrative behavior. From these topics we often see 1 or 2 questions, usually 1 questions every year. But the crux here is the topic from CPA to personal administration. And when we read newspapers, when we read some magazines, it is actually the topic from CPA to personal administration. Mostly you will see the issues related to these are very, very much in news, right? Why? Because when public administration was in crisis, okay, after coming of Herbert Simon fact value dichotomy concept, obviously inspired from David Hume concept of is ought value. When the discipline went into crisis, the response is this. And obviously question is going to come from response. Question is going to come from response, where we will include public administration evolution here. Here we are including this. कोई अलग नहीं है वो. That is not very different from administrative theory. Right? So this is what is the distribution of public administration, the question, the topic wise questions in paper 1. Now let me give you a brief idea about paper 2. Come to paper 2. Right? This year, if you will observe the paper, by first reading, you will feel like always easy. Like always. But it is not that much easy. It is in continuum pattern which UPSC is following from 2-3 years. So paper 2, when it comes to content, okay, in some questions it is a challenge. So in paper 2, the real issue here is, okay, the choice of 5 questions which you have done. Because when we will compare paper 1 with paper 2, the choice is not looking very much in paper 1, because paper 1 is more or less average, right? But paper 2 is not average, it is little bit close to what we say difficult, specifically in the context of content, right? And obviously presentation, you can't ignore this in every paper, right? So I am assuming that you have basic idea of that presentation is key in both papers, right? Now let us start. Okay, see this public administration content team here, they asked me, okay, so why to not recognize their effort? See, these were some of the questions which content team framed, and they are more than happy that their questions came all है ना, directly तो आएगा नहीं, you know, not directly but indirectly. These are some questions you saw in paper 2. Okay, so now come to the question paper. See, if we observe the question paper, my focus is telling you the approach for answer writing. First, we will discuss briefly if any background is there to the question, right? Question number 1, obviously I will tell you intro as well as conclusion, which you may or you can use. Politics administration dichotomy debate is still a live comment, right? See, for the first time, it is Frank Goodnow in 1900, in a book, he gave clear-cut idea that politics and administration, they are two different things. But before Frank Goodnow, we saw Woodrow Wilson. But issue with Woodrow Wilson, क्योंकि यहाँ पे you know what is question is asking, debate, right? So if debate is there, so you should have conceptual clarity in your answer. Woodrow Wilson argues for actually both dichotomy as well as cooperation. One school of thought, a group of scholars, right, take this dichotomy approach and further develop the discipline specifically by the classical theorist focusing on specific principles. But this politics administration cooperation was very much neglected until 1940s. Here exception is Luther Gulick, who clear-cut argues that there is nothing called politics administration dichotomy. He very clear-cut argues for what? Cooperation between one classical thinker who was very clear-cut on this idea, and against this idea is obviously Luther Gulick. Then came behavioral school of thought, especially Herbert Simon. He rejects the idea itself. He says that for epistemological purpose, the concept of politics administration dichotomy itself is false. Rather, epistemology means knowledge. A philosophical term it is. So, inspired by David Hume, he gives the idea of fact-value dichotomy. If you will understand this concept, right, very clear-cut, you will understand why public administration went into crisis. Then a debate started between Simon versus Waldo. What was that debate? Waldo always argues for value-based epistemological study. Simon argues for fact. Right? And later on, Dwight Waldo very clear-cut argues that this is an orthodox model. We need to actually adopt heterodox model. So very clear-cut he argues for what? Politics administration cooperation. He says that politics and administration as two different things cannot exist and it is not possible. That is why we saw some development of concepts like public policy, development administration. This is the debate, but today more or less we agree on politics administration cooperation. See, I'm not telling you that you should have written this. Since question is telling you to comment, if you think that the concept of politics administration dichotomy still stands today, you can go with that. The real issue is not your stand. The real issue is how you are substantiating your answer. So obviously the introduction should be, you should start your answer by the concept itself, right? Body I told you, and obviously you conclude with the today how the idea of politics administration cooperation is universally accepted. The best you can see the new public service. Even you see the idea of postmodernism. Postmodernism is not based on differentiation between two, although it is little bit Marxist idea, but it hits the concept of even cooperation also, right? Now come to question number 1b, one of the most interesting question given in this paper. Formal organization are made up of informal group. Discuss. अभी तक क्या मालूम था? Until now what we were knowing? Formal organization is actually structured. It is the management who designs formal organization, right? For the first time, it is the Chester Bernard, right? Sorry, it is Elton Mayo who talks about, I am telling you about the background, who discovers this thing or the concept called informal organization. See, there is 2-3 questions on this concept itself. For example, after some time a question will come, Grapevine. Grapevine is very good example of informal organization. Chester Bernard argues that actually from formal organization, informal organization comes. Now question is asking you just ekdam ulta. Formal organization are made up of informal groups, right? It is Rancis Likert whose idea of system 4T and system 5, it is by the way given in Prasad and Prasad, not about system 5, but system 4T is very clear cut given. There he argues that informal organization is from there comes formal organization, and from formal to informal organization, meaning he went one step ahead of Chester Bernard. That is the question. So Chester Bernard I am sure every one of you may have mentioned, है ना? But it is actually Rancis Likert, right, who gave this idea. Very clear cut, right? System 4T and system 5. Right? System 4T and system 5 very closely, they are very close to matrix type of organization. So in introduction, right, write about the basic concept of formal, informal, then argue this, then you conclude the answer how there is now a universally accepted thing that formal and informal organization, it is more or less same thing, just situation changes, it changes. Right? Question number 1C. Okay. See, this is actually repetition of question in formal group. One very good example is grape wine. What is the question? Grape wine is a necessary evil. See, the concept of grape wine actually originated, okay, in US Civil War. Question is examined, right? US Civil War. Why? कैसे? During Civil War, telegraphs were very much prominently used. But होता क्या था? They used to go and the soldiers used to go and they used to cut the wires. So the medium of communication during that time was actually grape wine. Grape wine means rumor. Rumor, and it have been seen that this grape wine rumor, why? Because let us say this is an organization. Worker, apprentice, junior manager, senior manager, manager, director. Okay. Now this is grape. How this grape wine works? So it may be possible that manager of this hierarchy will tell something to junior manager. From here it will go here, then from here, everywhere it will go. So traditionally, the grape wine in terms of communication traditionally have been seen as a negative concept. ठीक है? Negative concept. You just think about, take any example in your college even today. Most of the rumor you will hear is false. It's not true. But management today has accepted is at one form of evil. Why? Because you have huge scope of using grape wine, right? You may have seen grapes plant, from there actually the term came. If used properly, the grape wine can be used for increasing the efficiency of any organization. Right? Mostly you need to relate it to the concept of communication because its real role is in communication. Right? Because in communication we read about noise, we need about receiver, sender, but here everything is very fast and mostly it is false communication. Okay. Then question number D. Healthy, easy questions. Healthy headquarter and field agencies relationship thrives on effective communication. Comment. See, no doubt headquarter and field agencies. Okay. Either it is Willigby or it is Gulick, right? First, in introduction, you write about है ना, headquarter and about field. Field is basically for implementation. It is closer to people. Very briefly, because it is 10 marker question. So you don't have much space. Very briefly, you need to write here. The focus should be on number one is communication. But it is not only communication which is important. Coordination of Mooney and relay is another key factor for healthy relationship between headquarter and field. Coordination, one of the biggest problem between them is related to, by the way, the line given by Mooney and relay. Coordination is the first principle of organization. Right? Here you need to argue. Okay, since question is asking you to comment, so your answer must not be one dimensional, okay, that it is only related to communication. Right? Then you can also write decision making. Decision making is, by the way, is also one very good concept which can be used here. Then media has become more of a societal lens than institutional lens analyze. So you need to do an analysis. Very good question. Media is called fourth pillar of democracy, an institution in itself. Right? An institution in itself. There is one thinker, sociologist thinker, which when we read about Chester Bernard, Mary Parker Follett, even Fred W. Ricks, his name is Talcott Parsons. He gave one theory called structural functional theory. The theory simply argues that structures in society, they are performing their function, right? That is how society survives. And information is a key here. But what has happened? The social media is double-edged sword. Right? Very good example of Grapevine is social media. Very good example. Okay? You may have seen how riots have also happened. For example, some years before, Karnataka police, they for 3-4 days, they undertook a mission to clarify this view that Northeast people are thrown out of that state. Okay, now what is happening? Social media is, without verifying, people are, right, get feeded by negative information. And obviously there is positive side also. For example, you see the democratization of information to the very deep in the society. Right? Now come to the question, media has become more of a societal lens than institutional lens. So rather than playing this role, it is playing a double-edged sword role, and it is negative role mainly because that is why this era is also called post-truth era. Right? That is why there is need for appropriate regulation on social media as well as digital content. Right? This is what, if you have written Talcott Parsons, then your answer is very, very unique. Remember that in public administration, the social view of administration have been given by very less thinker. Very less thinker has studied public administration from sociological perspective. The first person is Weber, and his very much inspired from Weber is Talcott Parson, then Bernard, then we see Fred W. Rex, then some postmodern thinkers also looks public administration from social perspective. Right? So Talcott Parsons is here, which you should have used here. You may have used. ठीक है? Question number 2A, simple question. McGregor's theory X and theory Y provide insights into human motivation at workplace differently. Examine in detail. So here, if you have written this in your answer, ठीक है, theory X and theory Y, this is wrong. Very common mistake people do. So question is on theory X and theory Y. Theory X, theory Y. Provide insights into human motivation at workplace differently. Okay? Here, reward and punishment motivates. Reward and punishment motivates. Right? Non-cognitive factor motivates, whereas in Y, it is actually the cognitive factor which motivates. Okay? So here, managers use the traditional way of management, since you need to examine in detailed way, and here we see participatory democratic style. Participatory democratic style of management. But in real life, organizations are not extreme. Organizations are either they will be here or they will be here. Right? This problem of Douglas McGregor was further refined by Rance's Likert idea of system 1, system 2, system 3 and system 4. And there he argues that most of the organizations are either in system 2 or in system 3. Since you need to examine it, this is what you should write in your answer. Easy question, conceptual question. Right? Since It is 20 marker, so you may also bring Abraham Maslow. How it seems that this is lower order need, that is higher order need. So Maslow, McGregor and Likert. Question number 2b. Good governance adds normative and evaluative attributes to process of governing comment. This is actually the definition given by United Nations. Okay, you don't need to go into the wordings because wordings say it looks little bit difficult. Focus on the key features of good governance, for example, transparency, right? Transparency, responsibility, accountability, participation, and responsiveness. And responsiveness. Okay. Here you need to comment also. So with example, write issues also. Okay. And what we are doing for the same. Question number C. Regulatory authorities are independent and effective for controlling service delivery activities but are subjected to extraneous factor. See, for those people who are from North and Central India, I always say this. If you understand Hindi, then look for Hindi translation because public administration is translated properly by UPSC. There is no query when it comes to translation. Sometimes Hindi translation is better than English, right? Take the case of TRI. Take the case of SEBI. Take the case of Competition Commission of India. In telecom, the private companies came with ideas that very clear cut, if not regulated, will start dominating the market, but sadly, TRI failed in that. I don't need to tell you about the situation of SEBI today. What is happening, you can see. Competition Commission of India, especially recently when it was Commission of India, there was deal related to cement companies and it was argued that Competition Commission of India was not responsive to the deal properly. This is what question is inspired from this, no doubt in that. Right? So do you agree? Obviously yes. लेकिन ये लास्ट में लिखना है, not in starting. Because question is asking you one thing, give reasons. The reason start from the basics. The basics are how they are selected. Number 1. The number 2 issue is related to accountability. How many times we have seen Parliament is discussing their working? Hardly we have seen. Number 3 is related to power. For example, for Sahara scam, SEBI went to Supreme Court. Supreme Court argued that no, SEBI has this kind of power to take action. But it took around 1.5 years for doing same. Right? So your answer should revolve around selection, accountability, and power of these institutions. That is what is asked here. Right? Come to question number. Okay, so question number 1 is compulsory. Okay, 2. Since 5 questions, I will tell you if I would be writing the exam, which 5 questions I will choose. है ना? Vary भी हो सकता है. ऐसा नहीं है कि you know which I am choosing that is best. Okay. I think this question is little bit incomplete. Question is strengthening social audit through appropriate will promote inclusive government comment. This is complete question. Okay. Strengthening social audit through appropriate ways will promote inclusive government. Social audit. Take the case of Andhra Pradesh. In Manrega, we see how during implementation, the third party agencies, right, the self-help groups, the NGOs, the women's group specifically, they are very much active when it comes to doing social audit on the implementation of the scheme. But this is, by the way, I am telling you from CAG report. Very famous report is there. You can read CAG report on government schemes. Take the case of North Indian states. The case of North Indian states, poor social audit. And obviously, if the accountability itself is suffering, then you can, you can assume the level of implementation, the issues in implementation which is happening. Right? Very contradictory. If we'll observe the government scheme is specifically needed to basic needs such as roti, kapda, makan, they are more required for North Indian states. For example, Goa does not want Awas Yojana because in general people are rich. Very less poverty rate is there. But the moment it starts implementation, you will find that a state, if implementing very nicely, but states which require that lacks in implementation. And one of the issue is social audit, proper social audit. Right? There is actually, see here you need to bring second ARC. Right, in question 3a for the first time second ARC is coming. Okay, even in context of good governance, not much they have discussed only, but here you can bring. So we have not institutionalized this concept, right? So this question requires will promote inclusive government. Obviously, the concept of social audit itself is a concept of inclusion, right? See here. Okay, this is what you should have written in your answer. Come to question number 3b. The development of administrative law in welfare state has made administrative tribunals a necessity. Examine. Very easy question, right? Modern state. The real welfare state originated after New Deal in USA in 1935 under the influence of Keynesian economics. It is here that the role of government increased in every sector, either insurance, infrastructure, okay, agriculture, because the Keynesian economy assumes that when there is a recession, it is the government who is going to be the biggest spender. That will create job, that will help us to tackle inflation, that will stabilize economy. It is here the real concept of modern state in terms of functioning, not conceptually. Conceptually, it originated even before. But in terms of functioning, here we saw when the role and responsibility of state increased very much. Right? New Deal, if you will see, is inspired from the concept of socialism of USSR. ऐसा कहते हैं, है ना? Many people argue, and this is true also. But then lots of issues started coming for which regular courts were not very expert or ready. So we adopted the idea of tribunals from French government. Right? The concept of administrative law, which argues that administration is different from society, so their issues should be looked separately. So we saw in terms of India, Article 323A, 323B, right? Tribunals were set up to deal with issues like railways, then you have for service conditions, income tax, okay? But now what has happened? We are seeing for every issue, tribunals are coming, number one. Then we see now High Court to Supreme Court, even this is going. So if this will continue, there will again problem is going to come. So somewhere we need to stop and recognize the ultimate power of tribunals subject to subject to their views on particular issue, right? Because if you will start going again through this, वही problem फिर से होगा. You are going to regular judiciary and it is taking time. At the same time, we need to reform the regular judicial system process. Okay, now come to question number 3C. Question number 3C. Ineffectiveness of legislative control over administration can stem from various factors, hence in ensuring effectiveness a comprehensive ठीक है. question our special mention, these are okay, special mention 0 hour, then you have budget, then you have provisions of standing committee, then we see motions like policy cut, token cut, okay. These are some of the methods by which you can say legislature use for controlling administration. But how much is control? This is the question. Why? Because we see how parliament as well as state legislatures, right, continuously their sitting is going down. Number one, then we see lack of expertise from the members, because in India we don't follow US system where even senator is expert in, he is advised, he is assisted by lots of expert in the issues, right? So there is lots of limitations when it comes to legislative control over administration, and it is ineffective. Many times it has been effective also, right? Many times it has been effective also, no doubt in that. But they are exceptions. Such cases are actually exceptions. Okay, so in this question, what you need to write is the way forward, the steps we need to take. Right? For example, the standing committee, the sitting should be increased and it should be live until chairman of standing committee is not deciding that the matter itself is confidential. Right? Then we need to increase the sitting days of parliament. Right? So some issues with solution you need to write this answer. ERG theory of motivation attempts to reconceptualize the theory of hierarchy of needs, one of the simplest question asked in exam. Okay, so you have physiological need, then you have safety need, then you have social need, then you have self-esteem, then you have self-actualization. Now, ERG theory or Aldeferer argues that this is this is relatedness, existence, and this is growth need. And he argues that actually it is, if a person start from here and let us say he wants to achieve self-esteem need and is not able to achieve that, then the lowest need, this will lead to frustration and he will become, right, he will come to lower need, and this need will become one of the most important for him, that is called frustration regression factor. And the real application of this theory is what? It is flexible. It is not like this. Okay, there is a scope of coming back if the basic need is not satisfied. This is what is the strength of theory. This is what the question is asking. Simple question. Scientific management and human relations theory are two distinct approach for improving efficiency and production. Explain. 4A, very simple. 4B, usse bhi simple. Okay. Question is explain, right? So obviously you don't have much scope to argue against the given aspect. When it comes to improving or achieving efficiency in terms of production, in in scientific management theory of Taylor, it is actually some steps or principles which organization needs to follow, as well as organization as well as individual needs to follow. Both need to follow the method. Whereas human relation theory argues that no, there is something called group phenomena due to Hawthorne effect. Right? Due to Hawthorne effect, there is a group phenomena where issues like communication, right? Issues like decision making matters for this group. So for them, efficiency is not by method but by a group. Right? But they don't reject scientific management theory of Taylor or Taylorism. That is why they are called neo-classical. Right? Here it is manager actually who is deciding. Now this issue was filtered further by Abraham Maslow, who Douglas McGregor, okay, any thinker you can use from post-behavioral, who it seems that the concept of human relation theory, see, human relation theory, we think only Elton Mayo. That is not true. The human relation theory also include these people, because the concept of group phenomena they applied in top level, middle level and lower level of the organization. Right? So your answer must not be limited to only Elton Mayo. Obviously in starting you need to mention this. But you need to have little bit depth in your answer. Right? New public governance and new public governance and emerging paradigm is contrasted with work-based approach of new public management. So this new public management came from public choice approach, right? Public choice approach, right? Thomas Hobbes philosophy, then Knut Wicksell, a Swedish economist, right? Then we see slowly and slowly from 50s to 60s how this theory developed in economics as public choice theory, right? It focuses on contracting out the services. Contracting out the services it focuses on promoting choice. Right? For example, here Peter Drucker is, you can quote Peter Drucker. See, Peter Drucker is one of the thinker. You can quote anywhere, when it comes to private sector. Peter Drucker gives the idea, the principle of abandonment. Right? There, in terms of implementation, we saw this in Reaganomics as well as in form of Thatcherism. But the issue is we also, this concept itself is actually against the basic principle of a state. State, the basic definition of public administration is what? State which serves. Right? And it is not the customer but the citizens for whom, right, the state is there, not customers. You can't argue citizens are customer because the social contract theory itself weakens with this assumption. Number one. Number two, you can't ignore the basic values. You can't ignore the weaker sections of society. Okay, so there is a contrast, but today we see models, right? We see models like Nordic countries. It is one of the best model which is a mixture of new public management and new public governance or new public service. Right? Today we see network type of governance. Today we see delayering of hierarchies. Right? Douglas McGregor. Douglas McGregor. So in introduction, obviously, you write about new public governance, then you write these things in your answer, then you conclude with this the way forward. So question number 1 and question number 4. Question number 4 seems very easy. Now we will come to question number 5. The anti-development thesis is a critical perspective on traditional development models. Comment. Okay. Traditional development model means Western model, that is called modernization. West is best, rest countries need to follow the the West. Simple. And this concept was promoted very much by World Bank, IMF, right? You focus on growth, you focus on increasing GDP. So in a response to that, anti-development theory came. Okay? Simple question, write the anti-development theories. Okay? How, rather than development, the developing countries are becoming underdeveloped. Then there is core periphery model. Some countries like South Korea, they are developing. It's not true that all developing countries are becoming underdeveloped. Right? Then we saw good governance approach. Okay, that good governance approach, by the way, also follows one universal model. Then we saw sustainable development model. Small is beautiful. Okay, many examples you can give here. Since question is telling you to comment and it is 10 marks question, okay, so here use small 1 2 table to write this much issue, क्योंकि लिखेंगे कैसे इतना, Okay, space is not there. Civil servants should be allowed only to cast vote or participate in electoral process of country. Examine. Very good question from personal administration. There is a country called Japan. In Japan, if you will observe, politicians are 60% retired civil servants. Civil servants in terms of respect, ये वाला respect नहीं which we see, right? कि people are making reels, not this respect. The respect of civil servant, okay, in society is very high. They are very honest. In some countries like France, Germany, we see they can even contest local elections. If they won, fine, they serve their term, again they go back to their service. Now this question is arguing civil servants should be allowed only to cast vote or participate in electoral process of the country. Examine. What do you think? See, some countries like UK and USA, they only allow this, not more than that. And India is also one country which follows this. See, my view should be we should continue this practice. At the same time, we should reform lots of issues which is remaining. For example, how after post-retirement people are joining political parties. That needs to be stopped. Right? That needs to be stopped. How we see post-retirement, recently it has been, from 3-4 years, we are continuously seeing this. How people are joining private sector. Now that is a big question mark on the tenure which these civil servants has completed in government. So these are some of the issues on which government should work on. Critical path method is a project management technique used to plan and manage project effectively. Discuss very simple question. Okay, I'm not going to give much focus on this critical because the path analysis or the networks which we make, if that is missed, the deadline is missed or the given specific date is mixed, what happens? It becomes very difficult to complete the project in a timely manner. Right? Easy question. Okay? Focus on both planning and managing. Auditing is, okay, first question related to audit. Auditing is not about finding faults, but it is all about ensuring the accuracy and integrity of financial information. Again, second ARC. Okay, easy question. Second ARC itself has argued that it has been seen that in audit report focus is more on faults, identifying there is this problem, there is this problem, is specifically related to policy issue. For example, recently DRDO chief argued that, right, what happens? See, research is a such kind of thing where you need to invest lots of money. Many times it fails. Right? Many times it fails. But what happens? The audit report will say this is a fault. Now, if this is a fault, then who will do research? People will not like to do research. Right? See, there have been always, traditionally, when US started going to space, moon and everything, then there was big debate in US society about this need of this thing, because lots of money were going. But US became superpower due to these technological developments only, right? So CAG rather than, or audit report done by any agency should not focus only on the fault finding, but the way how this money was spent, the finance. Okay, DRDO I gave you recently, it was in news. The study of public administration must include its ecology, discuss theoretical question. For example, cactus is one plant. You will find that it will mostly, right? You will find this mostly in desert areas. You will not find this plant in plain areas, right? Similarly, administration differs from country to country. For example, in India, you will find the concept of reservation in bureaucracy. Why? Because there is casteism in society. But same kind of reservation in UK you will not find. क्या different है? Ecology is different. What is different? Ecology is different. This is what question is telling you. The study of public administration must include in ecology. So obviously in ecology, the influence of culture, the influence of society, the influence of history, right? The influence of economics. This one cannot ignore. Right from comparative public administration, the approach like systems approach, structural function approach, they are all ecological in nature. Come to question number 6a. Question 5 also seems easy. A trend to adopt innovative practices in administrative ethics is gaining ground for improving public trust in government. Discuss. See, in our country, often administrative ethics is thought as anti-corruption effort. Not more than this. Right? We talk very much less on ethics. We talk very much less on civic culture. We talk very much less on what is called reversals in power in terms of governance, right? What is called individual responsibility. What is called third party audit, not done properly. Okay? The question is actually revolving around these issues. These issues you need to mention them in your answer here. One issue of content may came because this is a 20 marker question. If this would have been 10 marker, very easily you can write. But a 20 marker you may face little bit okay, you may face little bit problem. So writing appropriate content is obviously going to be challenge. The future of e-governance is shaped by emerging trends for making government services efficient and accessible. Analyze. Right? Question is on emerging trend. PFMS, you may have seen how Prime Minister clicks the button and within 1 minute large amount of money is transferred to the beneficiary's account. Then you may have seen at the state level how with the help of e-governance scheme in terms of land, in terms of scholarship, take the case of Madhya Pradesh, take the case of Karnataka, right, in terms of property, right, in terms of agriculture related schemes, how these are one of the emerging, right, changes we are seeing due to what is called Aadhaar based Aadhaar, mobile Aadhaar and technology. This is what you need to write in your answer, right? Question number C. Undoubtedly, social and historical factors play a significant role in shaping administrative system, but side by side understanding of these influences is essential for designing responsive governance structure. Examine. Okay, very good question. Social and historical factors. Right? Fred W. Ricks argue very nicely how there is overlapping of functions, how we see the phenomena of heterogeneity in society, how we see the issue of formalism. Then many thinkers at the level of micro comparative public administration also argues that how the Weberian bureaucracy is actually structurally structure wise it is Weber, but when it comes to functioning it is non-Weberian in nature. In terms of functioning, it is non-Weberian in nature. Right? Non-Weberian in nature. Now, question is telling you understanding of these influences is is essential for designing a responsive governance structure. See, obviously, we will get to know the reform only when we will know the problem. This is one of the biggest contribution of Fred W. Ricks. Right? He may not have given us much answer, but he has showed us lots of problem when studying the developing countries. Right? Question number 7a. Rick's prismatic model have been criticized as overly gloomy and technical complex, but it remains as a useful starting point for CPA research. Okay, so first part is technical complex. Okay, so he was criticized for using terms like prismatic, Sala, then terms like heterogeneity, formalism. Okay, so one thinker criticizes Fred W. Ricks as he should have first prepared a dictionary so that we may have understood his work. But still, after so many criticism, the basic point of starting CPA is Fred W. Ricks. Right, either it is CPA 2.0, right, or it is the micro CPA. It is the Fred W. Ricks. Why? Because social view of administration. And society is not, ना ऐसा नहीं कि society रातों रात it will change. It will not change. It's a slow and gradual phenomena. So due to this, because Fred W. Ricks is actually not, he has not written this, but it seems that is very much inspired from Max Weber idea of authority. Social view of public administration. Due to this, if you will observe their work, still Fred W. Ricks is a key. Right? He is a starting point, just like Max Weber is a starting point in terms of bureaucracy. One of the simplest question in this paper, performance management and performance appraisal. Okay, one is a year-long phenomena, one is a continuously going, one is a traditional, one is a new innovative process. Okay, clear cut, make chart and write this. Where is one of the simplest question? Balancing state intervention and market freedom is need for developing countries, right? Balancing market freedom at one side and state intervention at one side, right? When it intervenes, number one, when it comes to regulation, when it comes to serving the weaker section, whereas it promotes choice, it has finance, right? Public-private partnership, by the way, is a very good example of this. Now, question is asking, balancing state intervention and market freedom is the need of developing countries. Comment. Because if balance is not there, then what happens over developed society? Then we get issues of crony capitalism. Then we see elite model of public policy, right? These are some of the issues, okay, which need balancing, specifically in developing countries where still the capacity of state is not that much developed. That is why you may have seen that the ideas of market are very successful in those countries where state itself is very strong. If state is weak, then the idea of market fails. ठीक है? Bureaucracy in developing countries faces several challenges, and tackling of these will make them more responsive, adaptive, and aligned with development needs. Discuss. Okay. Simple question. Challenges. Okay. Number one is poor participation. Number two is bureaucracy itself is a rigid organization. Number three is issues in resource distribution. Okay, number four is corruption. Many issues you can mention. Number five is, okay, lack of consensus on many issues. ठीक है, right challenges, right solution with example. Easy question. Modern economists think public debt is essential means of increasing employment and element of economic policy, but it also shifts the burden on future generations. Again, this Keynesian economics is repeating, right? Because how you do that? Government start taking loan, and when government start taking loan, obviously it is the private sector which suffers, because for them now money available is less. So these days what we are seeing world over, the public debt is increasing, and government is telling for doing social responsibility. For take the case of many states in India, for example Punjab, Madhya Pradesh, uh, right, the issue, the level of debt which they are having, it is itself is a big worrying. So there is need for balancing, right? There is need a political will, there should be consensus that they should not very much promote the idea called political freebies, right? Easy question, you need lots of example here. ठीक है, only one economics question, hardcore economics, unless there is a sound mechanism for policy evaluation, policy formulation process remains redundant. Examine so some of the issues, right, some of the techniques of policy evaluation. Unless there is a sound mechanism for policy evaluation, policy formulation process remains redundant. Very good example is Awas Yojana, right? है ना? If you will read more about this, you will find that some states, very less states by the way, they want this scheme to be reframed into some flexibility should be there. Because when policy evaluation is happening, the bigger picture they are covering, but small important things they are missing that. So with example, write this. With policy, we are seeing one question, very surprised why very less they have asked, but it is UPSC, who knows. So we will take break of 2-3 minutes, then we will start paper 2. Okay, thank you. Hello class. Now we will start paper 2. Okay. So as I told you earlier, if we see paper 2, paper 2 on first reading, paper 1, right? Paper 1 seems little bit easy when we compare the same with other years, but paper 2 content wise it is not that much easy, especially some questions, right? Which are these questions? Obviously we'll see, right? But some questions are easy to do also, content also. Okay, so ethics in public services have been the main concern of Kautilya's Arthashastra. If we see Kautilya's Arthashastra, the ideas are related to personal administration, financial administration, then principles of public administration, and administrative ethics. It is more related to state. right? It is more related to state, and this is what this question is directly asking, right? Examine the statement. So some idea seems very idealistic to implement, right? Now come to question 1b. The Mughal administration was by nature centralized. Very easy question. For example, king was the law. The revenue was very much centralized. Revenue administration, the police and military, especially military, not police. Police was little bit decentralized. Especially if we observe military, it was very much centralized, right? But then also argue for the purpose of administration, how we also see some, right, some kind of decentralization of power, right, specifically in terms of local government. Okay. Now question number 2, autonomy to public undertaking is a myth. Analyze. So here, see, content wise, you may have written, but please bring SK Rungta panel report, because I don't see many people writing about this. One of the best report given on public sector undertaking by SK Rungta in 2012. Right? Easy question. It should be people's PMO. It can't be Prime Minister's PMO comment. Very good question. Because from 10 years, Prime Minister's office have been becoming very, very powerful. Now, how in this tenure, specifically from 2024, still that picture we need to wait for some time, but it is said that PMO have become very, very centralized organization, right? The role of cabinet secretary in terms of authority have been decreased, right? That is, by the way, not a very good practice, because our democracy follows a principle of cooperation, right? The concept of council of minister, right? Prime Minister is first among the equal. Among the equal, observe the word. Okay? So there is a need to reform Prime Minister's office. See, the biggest thing is political will. Implementation of GST has led to paradigm shift in center-state relation financially and politically. So financially, if we observe, we see centralization in terms of, right? But at the same time, we see bodies such as GST Council, where we see how the cooperative federalism is followed in spirit. But then you have issues which are related to, how some states, specifically southern states and states like Maharashtra, has been arguing that we, especially some leaders, that we give so much, we contribute so much to GST that we are not getting that much back politically. We see specifically in terms of legislative factors, more division is increasing. For example, CAA. Right? So with example, you need to write the answer. The National Data and Analysis Platform, right, NDAP of Niti Aayog facilitates a robust ecosystem to promote democratization and inclusivity in development. Discuss. So this question is little bit difficult to write. Okay, because you will not find much content on this, right? You go to its website, you will get. So actually it is a platform for compiling data, right? It is very important specifically in terms of policy formulation. Specifically, you will find data related to urban development, rural development, governance, right, health. In every field you will get data. Okay, here the real issue is of content, and also this question is of 20 marker. Question number 2, examine the impact on administration in view of changing relations between political and permanent executive, right? So we are seeing how the post retirement the civil servants are joining the political executive. Then we are seeing how there have been recently rise of political favorites bureaucrats, right? See, the real issue is there is no clear cut written rules between their relation. Even second ARC has also highlighted this issue. So there is a need now. Impact on administration. So these are two basic principles, neutrality and anonymity, on which administration is based. Now obviously if these things will happen, the key principle on which administration is based, it suffers, right? It suffers, which should not happen. So there is need for reforming okay, there is need for reforming. We should have at least some guidelines. I'm not we can't say rules, but guidelines when it comes to relation between them. Decentralized planning enhances economic development and social justice. Analyze decentralized planning, meaning the role of panchayat raj institutions, the role of urban local bodies, the role of district planning committees, ultimately the role of people. Question is easy, but you need facts and some data to write here, because now we are having Niti Aayog, not Planning Commission, and also planning at state level. These days it is not very much, right? It is not very much which is, no, we are not seeing the role of state planning board very often these days, right? But decentralized planning is one of the real way of achieving the goal of economic development and social justice, right? With example, write this answer. Question on State Finance Commission. Okay, role of State Finance Commission in distribution of finances between state and local governments is vital. Discuss. Question is by very good. State Finance Commission. See, after coming of Finance Commission, okay, specifically after coming of GST, the role of State Finance Commission has now been focused more to local bodies. But we often see recommendations are not accepted, right? Not implemented, also ignored. Many times state delay very much in setting up State Finance Commission, right? Second ARC again will come into picture here. One of the pillar of paper 2 is second ARC in public administration. Center-state relations are undergoing drastic change. Elaborate. See, question is arguing you to elaborate. So, write in terms of the changing aspect in administrative, then legislature, then the financial. Right? These 3 points you can consider while writing the answer. There have been a strain in a relation between governor and state government in recent past. Examine. Okay? For example, take the case of West Bengal, take the case of Kerala, take the case of Tamil Nadu, take the case of Karnataka very recently. So write example, then obviously you will write the recommendation of Sarkaria report and how continuously everyone more or less agrees with Sarkaria report. PSU have been bedrock of welfareism in India for many decades. Evaluate the pros and cons of current disinvestment scenario. So first you need to write the role of PSUs. Right, the role of PSUs as employment giver, as an institution of social justice, and the issues which they faced, because it is 20 marker question. Then today the policy of disinvestment is pros and cons. Simple question. Okay. The collegium system of appointments had to higher judiciary have been cornerstone of the independence of judiciary. It has remained as a subject of debate, right? So first judge's case, second judge's case, third judge's case. Okay, where collegium system was born. Now, recent debate is related to National Judicial Accountability Bill, NJAC. Right? NJAC. See, one cannot ignore the role of executive in appointments all over the world, right? All over the world, some kind of role is there for executive, right? You can't ignore them. Okay, this is what you need to write in the answer. The concept of bureaucratic authoritarianism is one of the models of non-democratic rules. Explain. Okay, so we saw the concept of overdeveloped bureaucracy. Then we saw concept of even Weber also warns us against the bureaucratic despotism. Okay, then Fred W. Rex argue for unbalanced polity. Right? Unbalanced polity. Right? Now read the question. Since you need to explain, so don't go against, right, the argument. Also write in the context of democratic aspect. Okay, the concept of bureaucratic authoritarianism is one of the models of non-democratic rules. In many democracy, for example, Pakistan, you know, they will say democracy, but actually they are not democracy. They are bureaucracy and military. That one complex is one relation is between them, where they rule like authoritarian, far away from democratic rule. Question number 5. The constitutional stature provided to public service commissions accord them the autonomy to work towards fair recruitment process. So obviously UPSC, but also argue about state public service commissions. Right? Write the context of recent controversies. Both UPSC as well as UPSC, by the way, has asked question on itself. And the controversy related to State Public Service Commission is kind of a continuous phenomena. Exams will not be held. If that will be held, then paper leak is there. If paper leak is there, if that is not there, then someone will go to court. If that is not there, then in interview there will be some compromises. These issues you need to argue in the answer. The neutrality of civil service have become a myth. Right? It is one of the key principle emphasized by Nolan Committee. One of the key principle, right, for survival of civil service. Okay. Now question is asking you, neutrality of civil service have become a myth. Comment. So what do you think? You need to argue. Obviously you need to argue that some issues may have came, but we can't say it has become myth. Right? Diplomatic answer. Examine the role of Telecom Regulatory Authority of India in protecting the interest of consumer is straightforward. See, when we prepare for UPSC, so all the regulatory authorities, it is recommended we should visit their website, right? For example, RBI, Competition Commission of India. Question was expected, everyone was expecting question on SEBI, but rather than SEBI, what came? TRI came. Okay. Simple question. If you have visited their website, if you have read about them, you can do. और थोड़ा सा मुश्किल होगा. Parliamentary control over public expenditure is declining. Question is repeating. This kind of question was in paper 1. right? Control of administration, right? Why same content will repeat? Less sitting, they are not expert, they are not advised by expert, many nitty gritty are there, which politicians don't understand. Then we see Golitan procedure. Okay, these things you need to write here. LPG has enhanced the participation of private sector in Indian economy. Here you need facts. Okay, simple question. The success of administrative reform in a country like India depends upon a political will. Right? The discipline of public administration itself is a product of administrative reform demanded by Woodrow Wilson. Right? You can bring Gerald C. Kaidan. You can give the definition of administrative reform argued by Gerald C. Kaidan. Right? Economic reforms, we also saw some kind of political reform, but we failed to see very much administrative reform. For example, recently there was, you saw what happened to lateral entry. Why? Political factor. It was withdrawn completely due to the political factor. Okay? Give examples. The journey of transformation of local governance have been long. Examine the challenges to realize the spirit of Gram Swaraj. So fund, functionary, right? These are okay. Then bring Robert Chambers here. Helicopter approach, aeroplane approach, the theory of reversals. Theory of reversals. Okay. Then come to with what aims and objective was capacity building commission was established. Again, not an easy question when it comes to content. Right? It was formed in 2021. Basically, its main issue is working on human resource, specifically Group A. It is one of the implementing agencies of Mission Karm Yogi or I Got platform. Okay. Very less information is also available on PIB. Right? On website, लिखने में थोड़ा सा you may feel little bit difficult. The separation of police investigation and prosecution has its own benefit and challenges. Very straightforward question. Straightforward question, right? Benefit. Second ARC, by the way, बहुत detail में they have argued this. Benefit, obviously, less burden on police, better investigation, right? It is a worldwide phenomena, right? Challenges may lack of expertise, right? See, you should go with separation. That is the key. You should go with separation. Because police reform is one of the reform which our country needs very badly. Lack of financial resource and independence in managing local funding in hindering the economic and social development of urban areas. Okay, although we saw issues of local, right, issues of bond, then still property tax is one of the main finance for them. But when we see, right, how in rains our city crumbles, then it is not a good picture for our city governance. Where is the problem? The problem is actually what second ARC argues: functional jungle, bureaucratic organization. Funding is one problem, not main problem. One of the problem is funding. Then state governments are not they themselves don't want to promote the city governments, because if they will promote that, a political challenge may came from there. NIA is playing again content. Okay, again, okay, here you need to write some facts, write the role of NIA, the success in many cases, and some limitations which it faces. Recently amendments was there and parliament increased its power. We briefly write this. Very good question. Police public relations are poor in India. What measures are required to, right, police public? The biggest problem in India is the structure of police, right? Rather than following metropolitan Bobby system, we are following a military system of policing. Then there is issue of behavior, then there is issue of infrastructure, then there is issue of funding, then there is issue of motivation. From this side there is issue of lack of trust, there is issue of poor civic culture, there is issue of lack of participation, right? For example, James Q. Wilson, his research has shown that if people are very sensitive, if community itself is very sensitive, then police is very responsive. But right, see, there is a concept called social capital by Robert Putnam, very famous thinker of Italy, that we have not worked on that part properly. The office of CAG and its functioning is away from public eye. It is still one of the most important office under the Constitution. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar equated this office as one of the most important office for functioning of democracy. Simple question, open-ended debate, write its functioning, its issues, and then mention the stand of second ARC, right? For example, 2G scam was proposed by, it was highlighted by CAG, but it failed to be proved in regular courts. Then come to question number, critically examine the problems of administration in coalition regimes. Very good question, often a very neglected topic when it comes to, right, public administration or issue of public policy. See what happens in coalition regimes. Okay, for example, it started in India right from 1967. And if we observe in terms of administration, it is from 1967 when the level of governance in our country started declining. It actually started from 1967 because what happened, the phenomena of casteism, the phenomena of regionalism started from here. And that impact we can see very much in administration also. Right? Then we see the state of, many times we see state of policy confusion due to the political constraint, but this is only one side. बहुत एक्सट्रीम आंसर नहीं लिखना है, डोंट राइट एक्सट्रीम आंसर, बिकॉज इंडिया सॉ LPG, India adopted new form of economics or economic model. India saw many types of reform only under what? Coalition regime with this bureaucratic administration only. So don't write extreme answer, right? That was paper 2. So again, little bit issue of content in 3-4 questions. Okay, we'll stop here. Thank you.